right, it looks like we are up and running. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Wood.
All right, I'll let you click through the slides here on my behalf, if that's okay. So welcome. I think before we get too deep into the presentation, let's do just some quick introductions. So if you and I have never met before, my name is Joe Wood. I'm Natomas Charter School's Executive Director, which means I'm kind of like superintendent. I work with all of the academies. And then Dr. Ellis, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello all, I'm Addie Ellis. I am Student Services Director, and it's really nice to see all of you.
And then Mrs. Burial?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Laura Burial. I'm the Teaching and Learning Director, and I also get to work with all of the academies, and I'm really happy to see so many VLA students and parents here today.
And fun story, when VLA first started, Mrs. Burial was the coordinator, and I worked with her on helping to put a lot of the technology in place. So VLA is a program that is near and dear to our hearts since we've been working with the program for the last 8 or 9 years. And then certainly last but not least, Mr. Dobson, you want to officially introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Kevin Dobson. I'm the Academy Coordinator. Great seeing some of my ACs and some of our students and families here. So thank you guys again for joining us today.
So as we get started, I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are from a public health standpoint and what we're doing school-wide. And then Mr. Dobson's going to talk about information more specific to VLA. So at Natomas Charter School, we have developed what we're calling our 4-stage plan for flexible learning. So the idea, at Natomas Charter School, we have site-based programs. That's Star Academy, Leading Edge, and PFAA, where kids come to school every single day. And then we have non-site-based programs like VLA and PACT, where students come to school certain times of the week or certain numbers of days pre-COVID, in, if you will, a normal year, whatever normal used to be. And so we started the school year in distance learning. So what that meant is that none of our students were coming to school and everyone was learning remotely. And then we transitioned a few months ago into what we call stage 2.5, which is really where we're starting to have things like distance learning hubs. These are students coming onto campus to get some additional support. And then when the public health conditions allow, we can transition into stage 2, which is everyone being able to come to campus, although they have to come to campus in a hybrid model, like coming certain days of the week, so that we can implement the 6-foot physical distancing that's necessary as part of the COVID-19 protocols. And then later on in the school year, hopefully, probably when there's a vaccine or treatment that's readily available, we'll be looking at going to stage 1, which is basically what life used to look like before COVID, where all of the students are able to come to school on a regular basis. As part of this 4-stage plan for flexible learning, we've also had some students who transferred from their site-based program, so in the case of this call, from PFAA to VLA, so they can be more a part of an independent study program for the entire year. So that's what we're doing as a school. You can go to the next slide, Mr. Dobson. So where are we at as a county? So unless you were living under a rock yesterday, you probably saw that a lot of the counties in California are experiencing significant increases in COVID-19 rates, and Sacramento County is not alone. So in beginning of September, the state switched to a new color-coded model where each county is associated or is given a color based on how their COVID-19 rates are in the county. And there's 2 metrics that are primarily looked at. There's the number of cases per 100,000 residents in the county, and then the percent positive. So, anyone can go get a COVID-19 test at a community testing center. And what they're looking at is what percentage of those tests that are being done throughout Sacramento County, whether it's at a community testing center or your doctor's office or another place, are coming back positive. So the way that little chart to the left works is that if the county is purple in one or more of those columns, so if it's purple in one column, it's purple in both columns, then the county is purple for that particular week. Similarly, if we're red in one column and orange in another column, we're red for that week, because red is a more severe color than orange. And then in Sacramento County, we never got to having any yellow data, but if we were orange and yellow, then we would be orange, is kind of the idea. So as you can see, looking at those numbers, over the last week, we've actually seen a really significant increase in COVID-19 cases in Sacramento County. We've actually seen more than a doubling in terms of the number of cases per 100,000 residents. we think that this has something to do with private gatherings during Halloween. This data is reflecting the beginning of that Halloween weekend or actually reflects a week after that Halloween weekend. So when some people were starting to come down potentially with COVID-19 symptoms. It's also though due largely to people not following the protocols. So out in, whether they're in private businesses, or maybe they're going to a gathering together and people aren't wearing the masks, or maybe they're participating in some sort of sporting event and aren't following the protocols. And so we're seeing transmission that way. And so our ability to fully reopen requires us to be actually red in both of those columns. So right now we're purple and red. We've got to be red in order to transition to that hybrid learning. So what are we doing in the meantime? What's that? Did you have a question, or maybe it was just an accident?
No, I think it was an accident.
Oh, okay. So let's go back to that previous slide then, Mr. Dobson. I think it got moved. So, so what is our plan moving forward? So right now we're kind of in a wait and see space. We're kind of waiting to see what happens with the county data over the next couple of weeks. There's a new data release each week that we use to sort of update our transition planning. But our hope is that we can transition to hybrid or on-site learning as soon as January 4th. That's actually been the timeline that we've been communicating. For our site-based programs, families have been able to choose hybrid or extended distance learning. And in the meantime, we're able to still do our distance learning hubs for the highest need students. And so what a distance learning hub, that kind of gets to the next section on limitations in the purple tier, is a distance learning hub is no more than, actually, Mr. Dobson, we went ahead to go back to the previous slide. So under limitations in the purple tier, so what's happened is our campus reopenings are paused. So it's kind of talking about that. And then in terms of our distance learning hubs, we can actually have up to 25% of students coming to campus to get some additional support. And what the hubs normally look like is no more than 14 students in a hub getting support from 1 or 2 adults. And I know that's how Mr. Dobson, the VLA team, have been building the distance learning hubs for VLA. And we're going to continue to look at the public health data over the next couple of weeks and then adjust our timelines as needed. So now next slide, Mr. Dobson. You're ready to push me along. Got it. So Natoma Charter School was founded on 3 pillars: students first, accountability, and innovation. And that's really what the VLA team has taken to heart, is they're thinking about how we're going to provide supports for kids. And we're really looking at 2 things. One, what are the academic supports that students need, but what are also the social emotional supports that students need? And how do we continue to create a supportive environment, especially when we might not all physically be together? I mean, if you were a VLA student last year, if you needed additional support, you might just come into the ALC and you'd see, a teacher there, and you'd be able to sit right down with them and get some immediate support. We have to think a little bit differently through that when we're not all on campus together, where we might be having to set up Zoom times, but still making sure that we have the high standards in place. Our goal is to create a college-ready, virtual program so that all of you are able to go on to college or career, whatever is going to come after VLA for you. And our goal is to continue that while we're still in this COVID-19 distance learning pandemic. Next slide. So with that, we're going to hand it over to Dr. Ellis, who's going to talk a little bit about the safety rules that are going to be happening on campus.
I had to turn off my heater so you wouldn't get the background noise. So one of the important things for us to know are our 5 safety rules. So first is making sure that you're wearing your face covering appropriately. A face covering, it covers nose, chin, and it doesn't have any holes or vents in it. Maintaining physical distance as much as possible, to the greatest extent possible, being at least 6 feet apart. So that's like 2 arms lengths spread out. Making sure that when we can, we meet outside or another well-ventilated area. So when you come on campus, you might notice that sometimes the doors are propped open. And that's just to make sure we have fresh air circulating. Washing hands before you're eating, after you're eating, when you're touching multiple use surfaces like door handles, making sure you're either washing or sanitizing your hands. And that's including, up to your wrists, under your nails. And making sure that when you do feel sick, that you're staying home. So the when in doubt, sit it out. That's a really important thing for us to remember, because one of the things that we know about COVID-19 is that the disease will exist in our community, and it's more about us as a community taking care of each other. So when we look at the next slide, The safety protocols is based on guidance from Sacramento County Public Health. We use a decision tree. It's really small here, so you can't see it all, but Mr. Dobson will make sure that the information is out to you. The decision tree is our guide. So there are low risk general symptoms that can be anything. And then there's some more higher risk red flag symptoms. And what we want you as students and as family members is to pay attention to what your symptoms are and your next steps. So for instance, if we look at this decision tree, it talks about having one low risk symptom is, yep, stay home. If you have a fever over 100.4, stay home, and you can return to school after you haven't had a symptom without taking medication for 72 hours. So that's with one symptom. But if you have two or more symptoms, or if you have one of the high risk symptoms, not only staying at home, but also having a check-in with the doctor. That's if you haven't been exposed to someone who's tested positive for COVID-19. If you've been exposed to someone who's tested positive, then it's staying home for at least 14 days to be quarantined. And when you do come on campus, you'll notice that in the office area, there is plexiglass placed there, and that you'll see additional reminders placed around campus with all the various safety rules. This is just an example of how to wear the face covering. As I said, it's covering nose, chin. It's not underneath your nose. It's not on top of your head. It's not down below your chin. It is making sure that your nose and mouth area are covered, and it should be comfortable to breathe through, and you shouldn't have to adjust it often. If you are a student and you have not practiced wearing your mask yet, I really encourage you to start getting used to wearing your face covering. If you haven't going out with your parents to the grocery store, to make sure that you are both getting used to wearing your mask for longer periods of time, but also being around other people. We can go to the next slide. The mask should not have a vent or hole. So you might see around the various masks that have a vent in it. Those vents are built in for comfort, but not from protection from particles that are released that can cause coronavirus transmission. So when we are on campus, it is a mask that does not have a hole or a vent. So the maintaining 6 feet, this was a really fun little picture that Mrs. Burial sent us last night. If you think about your science courses and what it means to have a bubble, we're really looking at your bubble space. And if the little red little picture right there is the virus, if you're way on the other side and you're not by it, you have secured your bubble space. That's why we want to have that 6 feet distance as best as possible, making sure you're following the directional signs. When you come on campus, you'll notice that there is some signage. We'll be having more in that look like one-way signals, look like doors for exits only, really paying attention to those so that we can make sure that we are maintaining our physical distance from others.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis.
You're welcome.
All right. Oh, we thought we were done.
Who knew? I had another slide. The last one is just washing your hands. My younger students, much younger than you all, enjoy this one because we all know how to wash our hands, but it's supposed to be wetting your hands first, rubbing it with soap for at least 20 seconds. You're getting the front and back, rinsing it under the water, grabbing a towel, not pressing the button to get the towel, but actually getting the towel from the bottom and then using the towel to turn it off, making sure that you are covering your coughs and sneeze. You'll be amazed at how many people take their mask off to sneeze. I'm one of them, but I still do the whole shoulder thing and making sure that you're washing your hands later. Our custodial team has increased its sanitizing of surfaces on our campus, and you'll notice after the Thanksgiving holiday, after the November break, you'll see more signage about what areas are cleaned daily, what's cleaned multiple times a day, and items that are cleaned weekly and on an as-needed basis. So I think that is all, Mr. Dobson.
That is it. Thank you, Dr. Ellis, and thank you, Dr. Wood, as well. So what I really wanted to do today as well is to go over where are we at as an academy? What has gone well now that we are 3/4 of the way, more than that actually, through semester one, and also how that has informed what are our next steps going forward into semester two. As to kind of start the conversation, I really wanted to celebrate our successes because we recognize that this pandemic has not been ideal, right? And that it has taken away, I think, things that just makes our community what it is, as Dr. Wood had talked about, the opportunity to come into the LC and just connect with friends and teachers. And so, how do we make the best of this situation and ensure that all students are learning? And so some of the successes that we've had thus far this year is that, first of all, I think we're one of the only schools in the region whose workshop schedule and yearly calendar have remained unchanged. We recognize that with so much inconsistency, providing some stability is really key in allowing students to access their education. At VLA, we welcomed in our largest freshman class in VLA history, which was something we're so excited about. But it also comes with new challenges, right? That we have all of these new students to integrate into our community, which is fully virtual to start the year. We have our largest leadership class in VLA history, which has been really, I would say, huge help for us as an academy, because it's allowed us the opportunity for students to continue to make fun and engaging activities throughout the year and throughout the semester. We also kicked off our dual enrollment courses with American River College. We had students this fall participating in 3 college classes. And, that was also a huge learning curve, because all of the things that American River College typically does had to shift online. And so they were also dealing with the pandemic. And so, a lot of time and effort went into getting students registered for those classes and providing structures so that students could be successful in those courses. All seniors have still actually been able to identify volunteer opportunities for their senior projects. Every senior has figured out a way to continue their senior project in a virtual format, which is fantastic. We've had numerous social events throughout the semester for students. We still have clubs that are up and running. And I think the most important thing is that students and staff are safe, and learning is continuing, which, I think up until this year, so many of us sometimes took for granted, at a school site. So we've collected a range of data, not just internally by looking at grades and academic progress, but we also sent out a parent survey and had a student survey at 2 different points in the semester. And so what we've seen is, again, continuing the positives, is that we have a great deal of supports that are available to our students. And students are pointing out, pretty early on, this survey was given in September, how and where these supports were available to them. So that was something that was a big concern for us. How do we shift our normal model where teachers just, have those informal conversations with students in the Learning Center? How do we shift that into a virtual format? And this gave us some affirmation that what we were doing was working, whether it was through the AC process, the teacher lab hours, or the teacher office hours. We also saw both students and staff reporting high levels of engagement in class, and this matched a staff survey and staff feedback that they provided. Almost 80% of students, over 80% of students, noted that they were engaged and paying attention during online classes, which I also think speaks to the courses and the way that our courses were structured throughout this semester. And then while we've certainly had some successes, we understand that this pandemic has made learning hard in both academically and socially for some students. And what we've seen is that stay-at-home learning has really worked for some and is really difficult for others. And I think that comes through in some of the survey data and to be honest, some of the grades that we've seen as well. Parents reported that for distance learning, about half of families indicated that distance learning has been difficult or challenging for them. And you see then again for teachers, for students, that in the distance learning format, students being connected with their teachers has been easy for about half of our students, and very easy for almost 20%, but nearly a quarter of our students have found it really difficult to connect with our teachers. And as I said, going into the year, welcoming such a large freshman class, this was something that was a high concern for us, is how do we ensure that students, all these new students, are integrated into our community and really feeling connected, whether that's with their teacher, their AC, or just the campus as a whole. And this was our student survey data. And on an average school day, we have about a quarter of our students noting that they are feeling bad or horrible. And I mean, this is the type of thing that honestly keeps me up at night, because I know that in a normal school year, kids are walking in that door and I'm able to check in on them. And, in this format, I don't have that in-person interaction. And so while yes, a majority of students are saying that they're feeling, okay, and some are saying they're great, this is a big concern for us regarding distance learning. And I know that, Dr. Ellis also, as the student service director, has seen an uptick just across all NCS in the amount of students that are having social emotional concerns. And so we sent out our parent survey in hopes of just trying to get some initial numbers. How many families would be interested in returning to campus? We had 90 responses, 54% of them. So it comes out to about 50% of our families said that yes, they would be interested in having their child return to campus. And this is where those tiers that Dr. Wood talked about in the beginning are really critical. Because, if we weren't in the purple, we could continue to expand our on-campus supports. But because of the purple tier, we are limited to where we can only bring 25% of our student body back on campus. So we'll talk about that, in a little bit. But I think that's something that's important to know as we kind of frame the discussion for going forward. So how are we addressing the students' needs? Again, we get the survey data, we see our grade checks, we see the student progress. And so how are we addressing that? We started our cohorts, we started bringing students back on campus back in October. And we had a single cohort of students, 14 students on campus, that was really focused on engagement. Students that needed a time and a place to just focus on schoolwork. We also recognize that this single half a day is not going to solve all of the challenges, and we recognize that going in. But this was our initial step in being able to provide some on-campus supports for students. And so that went all the way after our October break and into November. And then on the 9th of November, we actually doubled the size of the students that were able to access our on-campus supports. And so we now have 2 cohorts going that come for a single half day. Right now we have a cohort primarily of 11th and 12th graders that comes on campus every Tuesday morning. They were here today. And then we have our second cohort, which is primarily 9th and 10th graders that comes on Thursdays. We scheduled those 2 days because that allows students to not actually be in class during that time, and it allows them the opportunity to get some academic support while they're here from their actual teachers. Our goal is to continue to increase the amount of on-campus supports available to these students, with the goal of having eventually 2 full days per cohort, or potentially more, again, as we maybe expand beyond and back out of that purple tier. But the idea is that we will get to a point where cohort 1 is here for a Monday, Tuesday, cohort 2 is a Thursday, Friday. And then again, when we are out of that purple tier, our hope is that every student that wants to come to campus will have that opportunity. And the way that we would accomplish that is really our high needs academic students are moved into this third cohort. And what that would look like is those students actually would have the opportunity to be in their D2 classroom and be able to be on campus potentially up to 5 days a week. Again, really targeted academic support for those students most in need. And then for the students that want to be on campus or maybe don't have as high of needs, they would then be in the other 2 tiers, the other 2 cohorts. So that would be the Monday, Tuesday, or the Thursday, Friday. Now, it's important to note that students are spread out while they're on campus. So even though we're talking about a max of 3 cohorts, really we have 3 different places, and students are isolated in those areas. So we have the computer lab, kind of acting as its own cohort, supervised by our computer monitor. We do have teachers that will rotate around these zones, but by and large, the students that's a single cohort within one. The other one is in our learning center. We have students that are learning from that space, and then our N4 classroom. So this allows us to, again, ensure that even though we're not going above that 14 number, students are actually pretty well spaced out while they're on campus. So I want to share some pictures of what does this look like. I tell you, this has been probably the highlight of my year, maybe going back to March. And I think I can honestly speak for all of our staff when I say that. You can see the first day and that kind of first picture, staff was lined up and welcoming kids. It was the weirdest thing. We're welcoming students on the first day of school in October. But it was just something that it's been so nice to welcome students back and to see students back on campus. And so I want to talk about what does it look like. So outside, you'll see in the second picture there where Ms. Del Monte is taking the temperature. Then I ask the screening questions. After students have passed those two things, they come on in to our learning center. There's a one-way entrance and a one-way exit. Students do have headphones and Chromebooks available if they forget their devices, but in all intents and purposes, students are bringing their own devices and headphones and have been using them. Each student has an individualized learning plan, which I'll show you an example of on the next slide. It's basically a to-do list of tasks to complete. As I already mentioned, staff circulates between our 3 learning areas, computer lab, learning center, and N4, providing 30-minute blocks of academic support. Breaks are provided after each hour block. It just follows their normal workshop schedule. So you'll see, if you were on campus, you would see staff leading walks around our field or around our campus. So just kind of getting everybody outside, moving around. And then at the end of the day, because at this point, students are only on campus up until lunch, students are able to have free lunch and pick it up on their way home at the end of the day. Okay. So our individual learning spaces, just wanted to show you some pictures. We have N4 over there on the left. Again, students are spread out. And then our learning center. And then, in the far right picture, there's a window all the way in the back left. That is the entrance into our computer lab. And this is that individual student learning plan that I was discussing. Teachers are available in 30-minute blocks of time. And then the academic coach or teacher assistant or our ed specialist is putting this together and printing it out and sharing the digital version with students before they arrive to campus. And then the hard copy is obviously on their workspace when they arrive. And the goal is that if I am, developing this plan for a student, I'm going to work on my social studies work during this time period because Ms. Eichner is there. Or I'm going to work on my Spanish work during this time period because Ms. Meditz is available. And so we're trying to align the assignments and the work that students are doing with the on-campus supports that are available. Then we always also include a list of assignments students can complete if they finish early. So current numbers, we have 32 students currently attending, split between 2 cohorts, cohort 1 and cohort 2, as I said. Right now, they are only here on campus for those single half days. So cohort 1 is Tuesday up until lunch, and Thursday is cohort 2 up until lunch. Again, we talk about it in the way that we message it is that, we have 2 cohorts. For all intents and purposes, they're actually broken up into 3 cohorts when students are on campus. We have some time this week to discuss next steps, and we continue to do this as a staff, obviously in accordance with the public health guidelines. At this point, we can't increase the number of students on campus. We're right at that 25% number. But, again, as allowed, we certainly would like to allow more students to have access to these on-campus supports. Next steps of what it may look like. It will be maybe a Monday half day and a Tuesday half day for cohort 1, or we could just scale up where it's Tuesday for a full day. That's something that we'll continue to discuss with the students currently participating and with our staff to see what is, the most bang for the buck for our students, since it is such a limited time on campus either way. So what are we doing in semester 2? Again, given our current status, given the fact that consistency we know is critical, we're going to continue on with our Learning Hub model. We're going to continue on with our workshop schedule. It will remain largely the same from semester 1. Again, cohort students will be on campus, hopefully 2 full days is the goal in semester 2, that we'll be able to have all students in those cohorts on campus for at least 2 full days. When we move away from that purple tier, as I've said numerous times during this call, we really do want to expand our learning format, learning hub format, so that all interested students have the opportunity to return. On-campus time will continue to be very structured using those individual student learning plans. Our hope, though, is that face time with the teacher is really going to be the valuable piece of coming to campus. Again, all students will have access to at least 1 hour with their teachers. That's the hope, is they'll have 1 hour with their instructor per week once we start to expand the days on campus. Teachers will continue to rotate. And again, for those students not returning onto campus, you'll still have the same support systems and access to your teachers the same way that you've had thus far. You have those supplemental lab times where teachers have an hour block per subject available for students. So at that point, we've done a lot of talking. I want to open it up for any questions that you all may have, whether that is about our safety plan, about where NCS is as a whole, or about our plans for semester 2. And obviously, if you have any questions regarding what we're currently doing. So I want to give everybody the opportunity. If you have a question, please place it in the chat, and then Ms. Burial can read that for us. So Ms. Burial, do we have any in the chat right now?
We do not currently. Oh, wait. As soon as I said that, one came up. So the question is, what will happen for those students with PFAA electives?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So one of the things that we're looking to continue is really run it exactly what we've done this semester. Maybe Dr. Wood can chime in and share a little bit of what PFAA is envisioning. But basically, our students would learn from like the distance learning format. Not all PFA students are coming on campus. And so our VLA students would basically have the equivalent experience as those PFA students who choose not to come on campus.
Yes, I can add to that. About between 25 and 30% of PFAA students are going to continue on distance learning. So you will not be the only students like remoting into the classes, if you will. To a certain degree, though, we won't know for sure when that's going to start with some kids coming on campus until sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So I think for now, kind of like Mr. Dobson just said, I would envision yourself planning on attending those classes for the foreseeable future via the way you're currently doing it.
And just to add to that as well, obviously I've been working with Dr. Gandhi just to ensure that our schedule continues to be aligned with what PFA's schedule is. It may not align minute for minute, but if a student's in second period, it will fit within their block of time at VLA.
We have a second question, a follow-up question. It looks like, would it be possible to keep doing distance learning for VLA classes and return to campus for PFAA classes?
So I can maybe share my thoughts, but maybe Dr. Wood should chime in on that one. But, my thoughts, I know this had come up previously. The concern was, depending on the way the cohorts are structured with PFAA, we would have maybe a mixing of cohorts if the VLA student were participating. And so that's why, one, the schedule, and two, the mixing of cohorts was why we envisioned staying in the virtual format.
Yes, and there's some logistical issues as well. So first of all, you might have a VLA class that backs right up to a PFAA class, and we don't have the LC like we used to have in the future where you just can kind of hang out. We have to actually have cohorts of students with tracked attendance and that sort of thing that we're following. Similarly, the PFAA classes themselves are going to actually have very limited enrollment. No more than 15 students will actually be in that classroom so that we can have the 6-foot physical distancing. So that was the other reason why it's not really feasible to come to campus for those classes and then do your VLA classes virtually.
That's a great question.
We have another question. Will workshop schedules stay the same in the next semester?
So it's a great question. Yes and no. So it will, the times will stay the same. By and large, the courses will stay the same. but there are a couple tweaks, and this happens every year, where, for example, geography is going to be taught in second semester. In addition, some of our classes that meet twice a week, we've been in kind of some discussions with teachers, and there may be some changes with that as well for particularly science, biology, and chemistry. With the way that our lab times are structured, may not have as high of a need to continue to have twice weekly meetings for the science courses. Again, I think it's important to note that the reason why we had twice weekly science meetings is because in a normal year, we were doing on-campus labs during that second meeting. So that will be coming out. The final draft will be right after Thanksgiving, because we know students are enrolling for college classes as well. All right. Other questions?
I don't see any others in the chat.
Okay, so the recording will be posted again on our NCS YouTube page. I want to just maybe kind of thank everybody again for attending. Dr. Wood and Dr. Ellis, do you guys or Ms. Barrow have anything else before I end the recording?
I want to say thank you as well. I mean, out of all the community meetings that we've done, this is the one that's had the highest percentage of students attending. So I just want to say you guys rock as VLA kids. Some of our other programs, they just make their parents go. So I'm very impressed with the high degree of responsibility and independence you are each taking in terms of figuring out what the next steps ahead for you are. So thank you. Thank you for making time tonight and come. And certainly if there's any questions after this meeting, you can always, contact me or Mr. Dobson or the rest of us, and we're happy to help you.
That was my only comment. I was extremely, and I am extremely happy to see so many students here. Thank you for the time. And yep, we're always here to answer questions.
And
right,
I would like to echo that. Of course, VLA students are awesome, but also I think the thoughtfulness of the questions that you guys are asking and just how you're processing this, I think is very mature and makes me proud to work with VLA.
And I will, before I end the recording, because I know this has come up and I don't see any senior parents here, I want to just make sure that we're all aware. We do know that end of the year celebrations is a big concern, including graduation and all of that. That's been addressed somewhat in our 12th grade level meetings, but continued communication will come out regarding our end of the year celebrations. So we are aware of that. I will say, I guess, on a good note, we have done this before now. So, we will continue to navigate it as we go through.
And I haven't been to the 12th grade meetings, but I will add this, it is November. At this point, it's not even on public health's radar, like they're not thinking about it, but I know that they know how important these events are to our school communities and to each of you. And so I have full confidence that they will be putting out guidelines that, to the best of our ability of keeping everyone safe, will allow us to have some sort of celebrations. And like Mr. Dobson was alluding to, it might have some similarities to last year. We'll kind of have to see where we are by April, May, June time. But be thinking about those creative kind of ideas that we can do to celebrate our class of 2021.
Awesome. Well, thank you all, and have a great evening.
Good night.